Hi, Penny here. As usual, I'm here to talk about some bookish things. Specifically, I thought that instead of doing my 4-book wrap-ups where I just put 4 random books together, I would start grouping them by genre. So whenever I get about 1,000-ish pages of a genre that I've read, I'll do a little video for you guys about that genre. So for today's video, I've put together 3 books. To be honest, they're not exactly the same genre, but they're not a genre I normally read, and they're all about murder and mystery, so close enough. And the order I'm going to go through these books is the order that I read them in, but coincidentally is also the order of worst to best. So the first and the worst is The Casual Vacancy by J.K. Rowling. I did already mention this in my April wrap-up and say that I only gave it 2 stars. The more I think about it, maybe it's a 1.5. I've been battling 1 or 2, and I think that's because it belongs halfway in between. So this book is the first book that J.K. Rowling released after the Harry Potter series, and a lot of people didn't like it. And at the time, I figured it was because it was just a different genre and a different target market from the Harry Potter series, and so people weren't expecting what this is. But once I read it, I realized that no, it's just a terrible book. I do think that contrasting it to Harry Potter will help me explain why Harry Potter is a great book series and this is not a good book. So firstly, the Harry Potter series is full of good people trying to do good things. And while there are bad people or even grey people, it's made very clear what actions are good and what actions are bad. In this book, I guess you could say all the characters are kind of morally grey, but actually I think all the characters are just awful people. And I wonder if J.K. Rowling was trying to make some kind of comment about people that live in small towns. And what I hated about the people in this book the most is how judgmental they were. So most of the chapters are written from a single person's perspective, although it might jump between perspectives within a chapter, which really made things confusing, not to mention the fact that we had about 20 characters that we needed to try and figure out while we're jumping between their perspectives. But they were all so horrible and judgmental about each other, and I just really disliked reading those kind of horrible judgmental thoughts because I don't like thinking in that way. Of course, sometimes all of us are judgmental. I don't want to have those kind of thoughts in my head, and whenever I catch myself thinking like that, I try to stop it. So I don't want books putting that in my head. I also think the Harry Potter series is a series that fills you with hope that good will win in the end. This book is pretty hopeless. As I said, there are so many characters that you need to get a handle from, and every single one kind of has a terrible life. They're all unhappy. In the end, they're still unhappy. Also, every family in this book is highly dysfunctional, and I know a lot of families can be dysfunctional, but I don't think it's helpful to normalize it in the way that this book seems to. And I felt like a lot of the adults in the book made excuses for the other adults' bad behavior, which means it wasn't properly called out as bad behavior. Harry Potter also has quite a lot of revelations throughout the series, and you're learning new things as you go. In this series, even though we've got this death in the beginning, there's never any mystery about the death. He dies of an aneurysm. And then what happens at the end of the story was just kind of expected, and although it was incredibly sad, and that's what made me want to rate this a little bit higher, is that it made me feel something, the ending was just awful. It didn't leave me with any feelings except, oh, that was awful. I just think J.K. Rowling tried to address too many things in this book, and it's very difficult as a reader to follow what's going on, and there's very little payoff in the end for so much effort. So we'll be getting rid of that book. And instead, let's talk about the second one, which is The Girl Who Played with Fire by Stieg Larrson. Now this, I gave 2 stars, maybe 2.25. I'm getting very into decimal points at the moment. So this is the second book in the Millenium series, where we follow primarily this defamed journalist who's been struggling with his career, as well as Elizabeth Salander, who is this girl who really struggles fitting in. She's a strange girl. In the first book, they investigate a murder together. In the second book, a lot of things were happening. And I think that's the problem with this one. It was kind of just so bitsy and all over the place. And like the first book, it took quite a long time to actually get to the main murder. And once we got to the main murder in the middle bit, I was actually quite engaged because it's revealed that the murder has something to do with Lisbeth Salander, who is my favorite character, although some of the things that happened in this book did make me like her slightly less. And I just don't know how realistic a lot of the things that happen in this book were. Then after the middle bit, we stopped following Lisbeth Salander so much and started following all the different characters again. And again, things got really bitsy and I kind of lost my engagement. And it felt like the end was quite drawn out. So I guess this is another book that I wouldn't really recommend. You know, I could pretend that these wrap-ups were like book recommendations if I was reading more good books. But that said, I did really like the next book. Although, I don't remember what I rated it. I haven't got my glasses on, so I have to look very closely. I only rated it 3 stars, but I think this could be a 3.5. There were a few things that let it down from being a 4. So did I say what book I'm talking about? I'm talking about Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. And this book follows this young woman who is training to be a companion, but she meets a man and ends up going to live in this very fancy house. But the whole time she's very intimidated by the memory of this guy's first wife, Rebecca. So you never find out the name of the main character, and I thought that was quite an interesting way of writing it. And I really enjoyed the atmosphere of the writing. I did listen to this on audiobook, and for me, I think it was a really great way to read the story, even though it was a little bit of an older writing style. Let me check again. When was this book published? Oh, I'm so blind. So it was published in 1938, so this counts as a classic, I think, which is very impressive because I normally don't like classics, but this one, I did really enjoy it. I love the way that the story was revealed very slowly. I think it was very impressive to keep me engaged that long because normally I'm all about the fast-paced, plot-based stories. But the spooky atmosphere just kind of kept it going so nicely. I will say some of the things that kind of let it down for me, the main character did frustrate me. I guess she's kind of like very shy and she's always wanting to please people. So she was always doing things that she didn't really want to do. I just wanted to say, speak up. Although I say that and I can still kind of relate to her because often I do things I don't want to do. So maybe it was frustrating because I'm kind of frustrated with myself for doing that kind of thing. The other thing is that I think you're supposed to like the love interest, feel a lot of sympathy for him, but in my opinion, he was often abusive and what he did in the end wasn't justified. And so it kind of frustrated me again when the main character would put up with some of his antics because she loved him. And that's not something I would do, but I know other people do it. It's definitely realistic, but I don't like men like that. So those were the 3 murdery mystery books that I have read recently-ish. If you've read any of those books, I would love to talk to you about them down in the comments. Or if you have any murdery mystery recommendations, I would love those too. Otherwise, I hope you're having a wonderful day. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.